Oh, it being 8:33, I'm going to assume some more people will come on a little later. We had a mix up on the time. There were several people that wanted to come in at 7. So no, Vicky, you weren't the only one.
This is pretty late for a training class, I think.
Yeah, well, see, one of the problems that we have to do is we have to work around other club meetings, and most of them 6 to 7, 7 to 8, and so this avoids all of those. But
Yes, and this being my Zoom account, I get emails when people, so there actually was somebody who tried to join the meeting at 1:22 Central Standard Time this morning.
yeah, okay. So let's see. We're going to do that. Okay. We are going to work on participation today. And the reason that we're going to hit that is because the problems that we will see in a club that is struggling is the fact that most of them are burned out. And they are the ones that are always the table topics master, and their default is a grammarian, and oh yeah, I get to time again, oh goody. And if we can get them involved in the roles and possibly release some of the pressure by having guests come in, we had some ideas where we had a club rescue troop that would go in and basically run the meeting so that the people that were normally having to do this got to sit back and just enjoy the meeting and take a little pressure off. But then it got out that it was a club rescue club and club rescue squad, and they are going, oh, well, hey. And that kind of went by the wayside. I don't believe we have a club rescue squad now, but there are a lot of times when we will invite several of our friends and members of other clubs to come in and take a look and see if maybe they could come to a few meetings and relieve some of the pressure. Sometimes that is all it takes for people to get their steam back up. But one of the things that we need to make sure is that everybody that comes into a club realizes that just doing their part is not just doing their part. When you're saying, when you join any club or organization, do you only learn when you are doing just your part? If you come to a speaking club and you speak, do you learn anything by way of listening or observing when you're not speaking? What do you learn from all the other positions? Where do you go from there? So what exactly is your part? So if you're starting with the basics, what kind of speaking skills or leadership skills do you improve when you are the timer? What kind of speaking or leadership skills do you learn or improve when you're the timer? Okay, Mark.
Oh, you always have to have a ringer in the audience to get things started, right? The thing that I get the most out of being the timer is it forces me to concentrate on something other than simply enjoying the speech. It's too easy, strange as it seems, it's too easy to just get involved listening to whoever it is speaking, and being the timer or some of the other roles, the way you help them as a timer is to keep accurate time and signal accurate time so that they can make the ends. So it gives you an opportunity to, I guess, learn multiple processing skills, which are valuable in some other settings.
Okay. Marg, you had something to say?
I was going to say, being a timer is a very difficult position to be in, because you have to be multitasking all the time. You have to be checking your time. You want to be listening to what they're saying. And you want to make sure while you're listening to the speech that you don't forget the time. And then when you're finished the time, you jot it down. You have to very quickly reset everything then to be ready again. So it's a very needs a very coordinated effort to be doing the timing, and you really learn the time management and what you're doing. And the purpose of the timing obviously is to make sure that we all know that we only speak within our allotted amount of time. But being the timer is not necessarily a very easy position, because you got to be right on top of the entire meeting.
Okay. All right. So my question still stands. What kind of speaking skills or leadership skills do you improve on or learn when you are a timer?
Well, you definitely have to learn how to prepare and practice your speech so that it stays within the time limits, and you have to know where you need to be at a certain light. So if you're not there, you have to know how you can condense your speech and what parts are optional, although really the whole speech should be necessary, but what parts, how you can segue yourself quickly into your closing if you're behind time, if you somehow got delayed, if the audience laughed longer than you intended, or if you added a comment that you didn't intend. So teach you to be organized and prepared and practiced.
Okay. Here's Vicky has some ideas.
There's a truck going past, hang on. Okay, so one of the things I think as a timer that you need to be able to do is how to say to someone politely how, if they're doing a 3 to 4 minute role, that they've actually gone 5 to 6 minutes. So you need to be able to say politely, hey, listen, you need to be more mindful of timing and respect to the rest of the meeting. So you need to learn those sorts of skills.
Okay, yeah, that's very true. Okay, well, here's a take that maybe you might not have thought of. How many times are you listening to a speech while you're timing and you check how much time it takes them to introduce their subject? And then you check how long does it take them to wrap it up? If the speech is not organized, then the timing goes a little on the wayside and they don't know where they are in the speech. So you learn to organize your speech by watching somebody and comparing what they're doing to what's on the timer, okay? If the speaker falls flat or goes over his allotted time, you have to figure out where he went over. Was it at the beginning? Did he have too much information? Did he go off on a bunny trail? Did he not time his speech when he was working? What does that teach you as a speaker? Well, you work on your time. You say, how much time do I want to devote to my introduction? How much time do I want to devote to my close? Can I fit all of these 3 points in the time that I have available? And then where do I start? So it takes a little extra effort on your part then to make use of the timing to analyze the really good speakers in the group and find out, is there a formula that allows them to get their speeches in the correct amount of time and still make the best point. Does that make any sense? Okay, Rob?
Yeah, and one of my advanced clubs, we tried this out, especially with like contest speeches, people that are practicing for contests. And I would, when I'm timing, I would write down when I felt they finished their intro and started point one, and when they started point two, and when they started point three, if that's the way their speech went, and then when they started their conclusion, and then in the timing report, actually tell them each of those pieces,
Mhm,
because you'd be surprised to find out in the 5 to 7 minutes, somebody would have like a 12-second intro, and
mhm.
then 4 minutes on point one, and 30 seconds on point two, and a minute on point three, and an 18-second conclusion. And you're, hey, maybe a little more balance, And so being able to kind of notice that. And then when you found somebody who was really strong and you saw how they split that up, and you're like, oh, that's why that worked. Like you said, that's something I can emulate. That can be a really good thing to do. Like I said, you don't have to be in an advanced club to do it. That's just when I've done it before, has
Mhm.
been in one of those kind of situations.
Have any of you trained a timer to take a look at the speeches at their timing and make notes to improve their own speaking by using the timer's role in analyzing how the good speakers use their time?
Never thought of that.
It's a
Yeah.
good
Okay.
thought.
All right, so let's move on to the grammarian. Okay. As a grammarian or a counter, we sometimes group those two together, grammarian, odd counter, especially in little clubs, because we don't have enough people to do two separate jobs. And that way you're listening for both the content and the words and how they actually express themselves in the best way possible. So how would you consider the part with the grammarian? How can being a grammarian be used to further your skills and help you reach your goals?
Well, number one, I think it helps your listening skills, makes you listen a little more and pay attention to actually what they're saying and how they're saying it.
That's good.
Of course, it doesn't make you a good grammarian unless you know grammar.
That helps.
That's the difference between grammarian and odd counter.
Yep.
And
Hi, this is
I would think, as Toastmasters, we're encouraged to speak with our evaluators ahead of time a little bit and say, this is what I'd really like you to look for. I think a little bit what Rebecca's kind of hinting at this is that we do the same with the timer and the grammarian, particularly if you're really working at polishing and want to have a good balanced speech. That's the type of thing we don't get back. So something you could encourage. If I were, I can't compete this year, but if I were, I would probably want to do that with the timer as suggested. How well did I balance the speech? Because that's critical to having a good speech. And unfortunately, odd counting has spoiled my enjoyment of just about everything on TV.
Yeah, me too. And also, though, being the odd counter also makes you realize there's a lot more crutch words out there than you think about when you're really listening for them, or when someone else points them out. It's like, I didn't know they were counting that too.
Yes. I listened to the tape of last session that we had, and my favorite word is K, and I don't know why I started using that. So yes, Amy.
I know that we have. Oh, go ahead.
Amy.
I'm sorry.
on one of my one of my Toastmasters meetings last week, somebody said something about how they were really grateful for the existence of the grammarian because they really liked the idea of learning new words, of adding new words to their vocabulary. And that really made me happy to hear. So I wanted to share, so I thought I would share that with everyone, that you should encourage people to look for unusual and interesting words that you don't hear every day, because you never know when it might be someone's first time hearing them. And that is a way in which we contribute to the education of our clubs.
Very good. Very good. Okay. See, at that time I had an O to it.
I have actually found myself, like this morning, I was on a club meeting that was fully online with Amy and Rebecca happened to be there, and I caught a couple of things I did that the grammarian did not catch, simply because having been grammarian, I've gotten better at listening even when I'm the one that's speaking.
So in other words, as a grammarian, you learn to listen critically to people's speeches, and in listening, you pick up words, phrases, metaphors, similaries, and other rhetorical devices for the clearest expression of your message. I have heard two people speak on the same subject, and one of them, their message came directly into the heart, into the head, and just wrecked me. You know, oh, I never thought of that before. And then another person spoke on the same exact subject, and I almost fell asleep. It was due to their word choice and the images that they could get. Anybody that thinks that they can give a speech without any type of emotion is delusional. And a lot of the things that allow us to be clear, it's the word pictures that we use, the descriptions, the feelings that they use, the way that they progress in the story, the way that they connect some things in their speeches that you would not have ever connected unless they had mentioned it. Those types of things are invaluable. And a lot of times as grammarian, we're looking for mistakes. And like Amy said, you have to look for the unusual, the descriptive, the really good uses of the language as well. And that helps you in your own speaking and also in your leadership, because if you cannot describe your vision in such a way that other people can grasp it and see it, they're not going to follow you. So in leadership, the grammarian role would be very, very critical in getting people to buy into what your vision is, and to make sure that everybody was on the same page, and make sure that there was no miscommunications going on, because then you have exactly the right words and exactly the right feeling that you want to get across to people when you are speaking. So, all right, let's move on to evaluators. Okay. So what kind of awareness can you build in observing evaluations? Now, that's just observing. How do you use those observations to help you get better evaluations yourself? And how do evaluations impact your speaking and leading abilities? Let's take a look at those things. Let's break it down. What kind of awareness can you build in observing evaluations? Observing, not actually giving or receiving, but observing.
When I first started out, I would notice how people would structure, like what they would look for. Were they looking for timing, or for timing, pacing? Were they looking for how they use the room? Were they looking for organization? Which things were they talking about that people kind of responded to? Because those are the things I wanted to look for in my speech as well.
That's good. Okay, Vicki.
Well, I think it's what I was going to say was something similar to Rob, in that I really want to know what to look for, because I feel like I give a reasonable evaluation, but I don't give a terrific evaluation. I always think that I rip off the speaker, that I'm not giving them enough. So listening to a good evaluator is such a great learning experience.
That's good. That's good. Anyone else?
What she said.
When I started, I haven't been with Toastmasters quite as long as Rob has, but when I started, I was worried about evaluations, receiving them, because in a previous life, I was a school teacher and college assistant professor. And quite often in that setting, evaluations were a means of finding dirt on people rather than helping them be better. So when I gave my icebreaker, I was more worried about how I was going to be treated by the evaluator than how the speech would go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that chases away recruits if they're overly harsh. But I find that when I'm not the speaker and not the evaluator, I think there's a big opportunity to learn both as a speaker and as a potential evaluator, because I see the speaker, and I see the evaluation and what they're looking for. Just like Vicky said, you look for what did they look for? But of course, I'm always thinking, oh, I liked how the speaker said that. I want to do that. And oh, I didn't know an evaluator would look for that. And I probably do the same thing. You know, so you can make yourself a better speaker and a better evaluator by really paying attention to both. And that's no matter what role you're doing. I mean, if you're just watching those things, that's the real benefit of being at a Toastmaster meeting, you know, even when you're not the speaker, that you can still learn and look for tips, look for things you want to do and things you want to avoid.
That's good. Okay,
We
so
had a
how do
rule
you
of-
use those observations to help you give better evaluations?
Steal their material, you know, move around the podium more, use your hands better, you know.
Emulate. I joined a club. When I joined, I was the newbie. The club was full of experienced people. I learned a lot because I could sit there and see good evaluations. I could sit there and see good speeches. I could sit there and see good meetings. I think that's a big benefit. I'm not sure everybody takes advantage of learning learning by observing.
Yeah.
As Randy will always say, you present, you get feedback, but you also observe.
Well, when you're new to Toastmasters, the evaluator, hearing the evaluator talk is where you start learning what are they looking for in this club or in this organization. That verbal feedback is so valuable, and you don't get that with the table topics. That's what George Hast and I, when we were doing the table topics tune-up, and even some of the events we did with Toastmasters Live, to give some feedback to table topics. Is you give a table topic and no one tells you whether you did good, bad, or whatever, unless you're in a competition. And even then you don't get the feedback, you didn't win. So the speech is your best chance of getting some feedback and seeing what Toastmasters is looking for to help me improve as a speaker.
So one of the things I picked up from Randy, who is past international director, and he's also he's been a Toastmaster for over 30 years, is that when he is doing an evaluation, he's not giving them a laundry list of things they have to fix. What he's doing is he brings out stuff that he enjoyed. And there are some speakers where you're saying, okay, how's he going to find something to enjoy about this speech? Oh, you know? And then he finds something. He says, I really liked your topic. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that was a good topic. And so I really liked the way you did your transitions in that. And we're thinking, you had to dig really hard to find that to be one of the good things that you were looking at. And then instead of trashing the rest of his speech, he'd say, one of the things that I would do next time, and he has his evaluations divided by what I liked best and what you can do next time. So LBs and NTs is what he calls them. What I liked best was blah, 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 blah. And now next time, and then he will just concentrate on one area, depending, of course, on the project. He says, you might, I had problems hearing you early on in your speech, but you seem to get better the further on you did. So I think you, as you relaxed, you got a little bit more confident and you could project your voice better. Now, see how he said that instead of you need to be louder. So I think what I saw, what I heard, what I enjoyed, I saw that you were walking around with your notes and you seemed very shaky with your notes. Could you maybe just put them down on the podium or on the lectern to make sure that you didn't drop them? One of the nice things about our lectern was that it was a music stand, and so it was movable. And so, well, for instance, Mark would get up there and he'd make a point to pull that thing all the way up, and then I'd get there and I'd look over the top of it, sort of like Kilroy, and then push it down, and it became a running joke in our group and allowed us to do stuff. But there was no place to hide shaking knees. And so, what was it he said? If you're worried about your shaking knees, distract your audience by doing something with your hands. And, we're all trying not to laugh out loud, but it worked. He was so much calmer the next time because he had his hands just going all the way like he was regular talking and everything. You couldn't see his knees shaking, because they weren't. He redirected all of his energy into his hands, and as a result, then he looked more confident, and it was really interesting. So when we are doing evaluations, we are learning how to couch our suggestions as I noticed you, and then go on with that type of thing. And when you are doing an evaluation anywhere else, it's like, well, okay, all these things need to be fixed, and it's due tomorrow. When we are doing this as Toastmasters, we're giving them a small enough chunk that it's something they can fix by their next speech, and it's not overwhelming. And we find out that in the workplace, or with our children, or with teachers that we don't happen to like very much, you can get a better response from them working with 1 or 2 points at a time, maybe 3 points at a time, and using the I noticed you did, or I felt you did, or I saw that you did, and I wanted to know, is there a reason that you prefer to do it this way? Or if this is the case, you might want to try something, something that worked for me was, and in doing that, then we're taking some of the pressure off. So when you are using these evaluations that you're getting from people in the clubs, how do you use these evaluations to impact the way you speak on your next project? Do you ever look back on the suggestions and use them on your next speech? I know it's one of the requirements in the level 1. You do a speech, you do get an evaluation, then you give the same speech, but you employ some of the stuff. But I'm not sure that we continue to do that after the project is over.
Back in the good old days, when I was getting started, I would take the results of the evaluation, not only from the evaluator, but also from the little feedback strips, and rewrite my script, rewrite my speech. I did that clear through my one CC I was going to do, and then did it through the second one and the third one and the fourth one. And it's one, I don't know if other people do that, but I that was a repeat. I write out my speeches ahead of time. I think them out first, then I write them out, and then at times I rewrite them afterwards, because that gets me a better idea of how to put together a good 5 to 7 minute presentation. Over the past few years, I've given longer presentations at various district meetings. And I agree with whoever it was that said, if you ask me to speak for an hour, I can do it tomorrow. But if you want a 10-minute speech, it's going to take longer to prepare. It seems to be easier. The longer the presentation is, seems to make it easier at times to prepare.
So how do evaluations impact the way that you work outside of Toastmasters?
I think that outside Toastmasters, there's a very similar problem we have in Toastmasters, and that's specificity versus vague. And I always hear this argument about you don't want to whitewash, you want to be, you want to be critical, and that's crap. What the real thing you want to think about is being vague versus being specific. So when you talk about somebody's opening and just say, I loved your opening, it was really great, I really caught my attention, that doesn't help. But when you tell why the opening worked, then it not only helps the speaker, but it helps all the rest of the people in the room to say, oh, I should try that technique with my opening, because they may not even remember what the person did specifically, and you point it out. And so on the receiving end, it's the same thing. I actually was, in a talk with a vice president that I support in my job, and she actually gave me like very direct feedback about me not speaking up often enough about a certain situation. And which, I mean, a couple of you that know me know that I'm usually willing to speak up about things, even at work. But in this case, I had kind of backed off a bit because I kind of felt like it wasn't, they didn't really want me to be kind of pushing in there. And she's like, I need you to be more assertive in these cases. I was like, oh, okay. So that was useful because she gave me the specific framework around where she wanted to be more assertive, versus just saying, you're not assertive. And I'm like, what does that even mean? But these type of cases, like, okay, so I can work with that because it was specific.
Very good. Anyone else?
I put in a plug for Pathways Level 1, the project evaluation and feedback. About the second or third time I actually went through that, I really paid attention to one of the tips they had, and it changed somewhat the way I do evaluations. You want to convince the person you're evaluating that their work is valuable, that their time, their preparation is valuable. So you want to make sure that you cite a couple of things from their presentation, not just, it was a great opening, but I do a couple of citations, jot down a couple of things that lets them know that you were really paying attention and that you were respecting their time and their preparation.
Very good. Vicky. You're still muted.
You're muted.
Okay. What I love that evaluation feedback, giving the speech a second time too. And what I was nominated to go into the area contest, which is tomorrow. And I was fortunate to be able to be a test speaker at another club in a different division. And I got some fabulous feedback from that. So I'm currently, which is what I was doing in the hour between when I logged on and when I came back again, is re-editing or editing my speech so that I can deliver a better speech tomorrow. And I find that by listening it really does make a difference to whatever you do, wherever you're speaking, whether it be at work or at Toastmasters or in any situation, even trying to get through to the family what your ideas are. It really does make a difference if you can make your message more succinct and to make it more purposeful.
Very good. How do we go about training people how to do better evaluations? Is that something that we as coaches do, or is it something that we suggest for outside speakers to come in and do? Or is it something that the club can do?
I think one thing about it is similar to other things we talked about before, where you can't just assume that an outside trainer is the right answer. Even if it might be, there are some clubs, like if you came into my club, for instance, and I was in a club, say with 10 people, and I need a coach, and you said, hey, I want to bring in an outside person to train on evaluation, I think, okay, you haven't paid attention to my club, right? Because that's not a thing that's my club is struggling with. But we are struggling with other things, right? So, if you were to offer that up, I was like, maybe you should come to 1 or 2 more meetings first before you start making suggestions, because that one won't really help us. So, that would be something I'd really be cautious of from the other side, because that is something I'm actually pretty good at training. But I wouldn't want to walk in and say, oh, well, just because I won a district contest years ago, that I'm the solution to your problems. I need to know what you really do need. And if they do need that, then help them figure out whether it's an internal or external trainer that will work. Because some clubs react differently to that external help, to keep adding more people. Oh, bring another trainer in and another trainer in, like you don't know anything and we all out there know everything.
Right. So that was a trick question, I confess. When you're working with clubs, you have to assume that they are not broken. And then you can talk to the leadership of the club and say, what kind of training do you think would be best to improve how people get to their goals? Because a lot of times they say, well, yeah, I'm going to be a speaker. And so the only thing I'm thinking about right now is being a speaker. And the only thing I'm thinking about right now is being a grammarian. And they don't realize the side benefits of observing what the grammarian is seeing, and observing what the timer is seeing, and observing what the evaluator is seeing. And as a result, they're missing part of the training that they could be getting in the club. So if you can bring that up to the members of the executive committee, your officers, they will come up with an idea. So, oh, well, we could have so you're a grammarian this week, and have a special talk by one of the people that we think is the best grammarian that we know, which is Bobby over here. And he's been doing grammarian for a while, and boy, he's really good at it. Or, you want to know about evaluations? Well, I saw this one guy in this other club that just gave an evaluation that was just out of this world. Maybe he can come and speak to us. And we let them take the ball and determine how they're going to solve it. Because if they want to become self-sustaining, they have to know, yeah, we have access to resources outside the club and resources inside the club that will help us get what we need out of the club. So something to remember. Okay. Table topics. How many skills do you employ to be a good table topics master? What kind of skills are you improving as a table topics speaker? So let's take a look at the table topics master. What kind of skills do they need to be improving on every time they're a table topics master?
One quick one is situational awareness. You need to know who the speakers and evaluators are and not go picking them first, right? So you kind of want to pay attention to who the people are that are in the background, or what the best order might be for who you can pick based on how much time you have.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay.
You also need to learn not to pick on the visitors. Let them
Especially
decide if they
first.
want to get it. If they're coming in and they're a little squeamish, you don't want to embarrass them right out the bat. You want to pick an experienced Toastmaster. They can show them what they do, and if they want to participate. But that's one way to chase off a visitor, someone who's coming in to get more comfortable public speaking, to bring them up front in front of everybody. So you got to have a little consideration for who you're picking, and then also keep a track of time. Some people will go and they'll give everybody one, and you're way over time. Like you said, you want to leave the evaluator alone, so because they're writing a speech right now, and go through that. So there's a little bit of all that you got to play into it.
We had one table topics master, Robert, and when he did table topics, he would speak for 10 minutes on the subject, and then he'd ask the question.
Oh, that's exaggerated. It wasn't 10 minutes.
Okay,
More like-
5.
More like 3 minutes.
Hey, Mark, quit heckling. Mute his microphone, Rebecca.
One of the things that I don't see a lot of table topics masters doing is, after you've asked the questions, and you have to prepare and come up with some good questions, but after you've asked the questions, you add value and good feeling to the people who actually answered them by recapping what people had said at the end. It's one of those things that's on the sheet for, did the table topics master recap the responses. It can make a big difference, because typically the first speaking that a new member gets into is a table topic, not the icebreaker. It's a table topic. And it really gives that new member or a guest the idea that, yes, you're important. We are taking time and we're paying attention to what you're saying.
Okay.
I think it's also about setting your speakers up for success. It's not about picking a topic that's going to stump them and make them wish they.
It's true.
I mean, I think we all know some table topics masters where you just pray they don't ask you, because it's going to be something bizarre and off the wall and just not relevant to the world kind of thing. So I think that as a table topics master, especially with your new people, you can get more complicated for people who are at the competition level, or people that are trying to get off on a certain tangent about things. You can pick a topic that's sort of in their level of expertise, but it's not about trying to stump people. So trying to teach them how to speak and about setting them up for success.
And as the table topics master, you got a good opportunity to give them some positive feedback and build their confidence for next time. Say, hey, that was a great job. I didn't think about that. That's really good. You can do a little bit of that. And as the table topics, you're the master of ceremonies. I always think it's one of the funnest roles in the club master meeting. I love doing the table topics.
I remember one table topic that we heard that says, if your life was a pop song, a popular song, what would it be? And one of the people that has been a Toastmaster for 35 years and could, answer anything at the drop of a hat, do a speech on a pencil or whatever, he was completely speechless. He's going. And it was really funny, because when he has done speeches regarding kites for most of his
Okay, we know who it is now,
right? And the first thing most of us said, let's go fly a kite, as the song, and so, or up and away, or and he didn't think of any of those, and everybody in the audience would say, I got one. And he just couldn't think of it. He was completely stumped. because he couldn't think of any popular songs.
And that was at a district contest.
Yep, it's just very, very funny. So,
For those of you who have heard of Lance Miller, he's got a terrific CD out on leadership, and he talks about on the leadership track. If you want to be a better leader, you start out by being a table topic master, because that's, you take control, as Scott's already hinted at there. You take control of part of the meeting. You are in control of it. You decide the questions, you decide who to call on, you decide, have we had enough? It's your first shot at leadership.
mhm. So how would being a table topic speaker help you in your speaking and leading ability?
Have you ever had to answer an impromptu question on the job?
Yeah, why isn't that software working? You gotta think fast.
Or if you're in any kind of a development situation and use daily stand-up meetings, you have to give a quick report and you're supposed to do it in a minute or two. Granted, you've got the question ahead of time, but you still have to structure a really, really nice Lance Miller speaks. It's,
Got a
you have
couple good
to-
CD
you have to
sets for
put it
club,
together.
for
You-
club excellence too. That are really good.
So if you're a speaker, you can make use of your timing experience, how to structure an answer. You figure you've got, on a 1 to 2 minute speech, your intro is going to be 15 seconds and so is your closing. And they should mirror each other, because that's what we've learned from our grammarian, to pick up words and phrases that we can repeat throughout the answer that will stick in people's brains. Then you have about 1.5 minutes to make your 3 points and supporting statements. This is where a collection of stories and experiences come in handy. So if you have some experiences that you have told more than once, like all of my Girl Scout stories and all of my fast food stories and all of my stories having to do with marching band and voice lessons, all of those stories that I have told on how not to take shortcuts. Yes, you do have to practice. There is no shortcut to the practice. This is the shortcut, you know, that type of thing. And then I can tell a story about it. And depending on how much time I have, it may be a 2-minute story or a 7-minute story. You don't have to make up a speech from scratch when you're doing a table topic. If the question rings a bell in your head, tell the story that comes first to your mind. You can reuse a part of a story you've already told. And the more stories that you collect, the more speeches you give, the more times you participate in table topics, the better you get, of course.
So the one way that I always tell people to get better table topics is to give more actual speeches.
Yes, exactly
You
right.
expand, because you never make up a table topic. You actually dig into your brain and remember a story and you tell it. So if you give speeches where you prepare stories or whatever you want to prepare, then when you have to dig in and get one, you built it already.
Mhm.
And like you said, you can trim it down or you can expand it. You know, like Mark
Exactly
said with
right.
Mark Twain's thing. If you want to just talk about that story all day, I'll just do it.
Yes.
I mean, if I need it down to 2 minutes, it's easier if I've tried it at 7 minutes first a couple times, got some feedback, and then I can knock it down to the real important
Exactly.
points.
And it doesn't work without the sound effects.
I was at a backward meeting earlier this evening, and I was called on to do a table topic, but the table topic master was going to figure out the question from my answer. And I also knew, because the timer had given her report right before we actually did anything, I knew that I had to talk for at least 3 minutes because I talked overly long. That's one of the more difficult things I've had to do. Didn't have a good idea of what I was going to talk about, and I had to do it for 3 minutes. It's an interesting exercise.
Exactly right. John Maxwell has a technique that he uses. He has a very large card file, and it's divided up into subject matter and to length of speech within each subject matter. And it's just the stories he tells. Oh, this is the story about Carl, our influencer in the first church that I had. Oh, and this is the story about the guy that taught the whole room how to juggle without knowing how to juggle himself. This is the story about how the pet puppy that everyone wanted to adopt ended up in the hands of a little kid stuck in a, oh, I think it was, I'd have to check, but I believe it was a homeless shelter. And they were living in their car and they couldn't bring the puppy into the homeless shelter. And so they had to find other ways to take care of the puppy, and ended up with this church that had adopted the puppy for them, found them jobs, found them housing, got them off the street simply because they needed a place for that puppy to go. It was a very, very touching story, and kind of makes you know, oh, this is so sweet. And then you talk to somebody who is in the business with the shelters, and they said, okay, well, that's totally made up, because the rules are like this and this, and you can't do this, you can't do that. So, you know, he just totally made that up. But it was a good story, and it helped us remember what the point was. It's one of those things that as a speaker, you can use these little stories when you're trying to get points across to people in your regular speaking, as an evaluator, as a contestant, working with a client or a student, with your boss, with your coworker. You can get a point across better if you've got those little stories saved up and using your head on how to introduce them to make your point. So if you have those stories that you can just grab on at a moment's notice, which is what Table Topics does, you can use them to help lead your group. You can help them learn how to do a new skill, to adopt a different perspective, to reach out and help someone that needs help by using these stories. So this is a very important thing about Table Topics, and a lot of people just do not realize how valuable this skill is. Okay, so let's look at the general evaluator. Now, the general evaluator is sort of like the logistics manager of the whole thing. He's working with the behind the curtain crew, the roadies, the guys that build the stage, who set up the sound system. You know, they're the evaluators, the timers, the grammarians, the people that open the room, and the greeters and everything. Basically, the general evaluator makes sure that the meeting goes the way the meeting is supposed to go. So when would you use this particular role outside of Toastmasters? I'm going to call on Marg. Marg Pearson. Yay, she's got her hand up.
I was just putting my hand up. I feel if you're having any kind of a meeting with your team, with your boss, with anything, you want to have it structured the same and have the logistical part the same as a general evaluator is doing, so that you have things running in the specific order you want the meeting to go. So that would be like the planning and the exact execution of the actual meeting.
Very good.
Hello. It's me. Yeah, Amy. I have an answer.
There she
If
is.
you are in charge of setting the agenda for a meeting, well, that's a good way to practice it. Well, of course, it's usually a club. For other clubs or organizations, it's usually a club president or a secretary who's responsible for creating the agenda. And I don't know, it just kind of came to mind.
Okay. Very good. Very good. It
And I
can
think
fit into
that-
other roles, can't it?
I think one of the things that we've gotten away from doing well, perhaps as clubs, with the advent of the really widespread use of the internet, free Toast host, et cetera, is the idea that the person who is in charge of the meeting is the vice president of education, and the person who is in charge of the speaking part of it is the Toastmaster and the overall, but the person who is in charge of the evaluation half, which is a very critical half, is the general evaluator. And I don't think enough general evaluators take the time, and I tell you, I don't. And I regret it at times, but general evaluator is leading a team. So leading a team, you've got to do more than hope they got the agenda from the Toastmaster or the VPE. You are responsible for the evaluators, for making sure that they're going to be there, for making sure that they know what they're evaluating. And you go down the line of all these evaluation positions we've talked about. And you used to have to do that with telephone, Rob. You remember that. I can remember getting calls before I joined Toastmasters where the Toastmaster or general evaluator was checking to make sure Rebecca was going to be at the meeting, because we did not have free Toast hosts then. Free Toast hosts came in, what, about 10 years ago, roughly? And that's part of leadership. What's the carryover into your real life? Anytime, as I think Marg said, anytime you lead a team anywhere, whether it's 2 people or 20 people, the skills that you pick up in being the general evaluator and leading and organizing and making sure a team works carry over. I don't know that we emphasize that enough.
One of the things that I saw at West Dodgers is that on their agenda, every time they had a role listed, the Toastmaster, the table topics, the timer, the grammarian, they had a description in how it could be used in the real world. This is, time management and doing this will, the general evaluator was someone that can do the follow-up and to do the debrief after an event or after a meeting. And it would go on about that type of thing. And it's very handy, but I think the role is actually bigger than most people give it credit. How many skills does it really involve in being a general evaluator? What are you looking at when you're being a general evaluator?
Everything.
Yes, Vicki. Oh, or is she saying bye-bye? Bye-bye, everybody wave.
was not applause.
How many skills does it involve?
Let me see. Organizing a team, listening, impromptu speaking. That's at least 3 big
Observing.
ones.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Observing.
Yes.
Assessing, giving feedback.
Making
Giving
sure the
encouragement.
reports are helpful.
Mhm. I also think the general evaluator can make sure that you're going in a positive direction. I've sat through a couple of meetings where some of the evaluations were overly harsh, or maybe the grammarian was a little aggressive. You know, you don't want to be so sugarcoating you're not giving any good suggestive feedback. But if it's really grueling, like Mark was talking about before, you're chasing off your new visitors and you're chasing off your long-term members because they don't want to stick around. So the evaluator's got to make sure that the meeting's going in a good direction, both positive, but also giving valuable feedback.
Exactly. So we're trying to moderate between being overly critical and whitewashing.
Right.
There has to be a happy medium in there. Yeah.
I know that in some of our meetings for a while there, we had somebody that would say we'd have visitors in the meeting, like they come in for the first time and last time, and someone would be maybe evaluating me, and they'd say, "Well, you're a seasoned Toastmaster, so I can be a little overly critical." Well, that might be true, and we were friends, and it didn't bother me. But I know that they were sitting there watching that, saying, "Oh my gosh, you know, she's really being picky on it." You got to give positive and a suggestion tapered, and give them that harsh talk to your friend after the meeting, because you are putting on a show. You got to be supportive for everybody, and it's got to meet a level for everyone
Right.
of benefit.
Well, one of the things that I'm trying to help people realize is that if you've got some evaluation that will help the rest of the club, that is what you should be presenting to
Yes.
the speaker. Okay.
Bingo.
If it's very specific to that person and it's serious enough, you don't tell them about them, you ask them about it. So what was your thinking behind this? How did you think this was going to go over with your group? Do you think maybe you could have gone a different direction? Is there something else that you wanted to get across? Why was, you know, so for instance, if we had somebody that was really not good with their PowerPoint, and you go in and you say, you know, that PowerPoint had mouse font, it was so tiny that nobody, and you were reading the stuff directly off the screen. It was horrible. What were you thinking when you did that? Oh my gosh, it was horrible. No, that's not how you would approach it. You approach it like, how many people do you suppose could actually read that whole slide without having to put on the reading glasses? And then they say, well, wouldn't it have been better to speak to a bullet point and let them think about things instead of trying to read what you were reading to them? Do you think maybe you might have presented this with a picture instead of words? Do you think, you know, you see, and we're coaching them through this rather than telling them, because they're not going to remember if it's telling. If they think it's their idea, what would be a better way to describe this? How about a graph? Could you do a graph? That might be easier for the math people in this group. I tell you what, you know, or if you've got little people, bunnies bopping around across the screen, you know, do you think that might break up the monotony of this terrible, awful, so oops. And so as you can see, when we're going through the the ideas behind what you want to present as an evaluator, even if it's something that needs strict evaluation, you work on that one-on-one, and you work on that with questions instead of statements. And the general evaluator works the same way. If there is something that, and catching somebody that was either whitewashing or being extra harsh, you say, do you suppose that they're going to be able to fix this extra harsh, you wouldn't say that, but this one comment that you made, do you suppose they're going to be able to conquer that problem in the time between now and their next speech? Maybe if we went in smaller increments. And, or, or if they're whitewashing, you say, could you be a little bit more specific what you meant by this, and then quote them back. I liked your introduction. Well, what exactly did you like it? Was it, how did you think this was something that stood out to you? And once again, you're coaching your evaluators, you're coaching your people rather than telling. And as general evaluator, you're still coaching your crew. You're still coaching your crew. So as a coach, you go in and you take a look at, are they coaching their crew, or are they just telling them? And the people are just ignoring the suggestions or not incorporating any of the stuff into their future speeches. They keep coming back with the same stuff. Is that a strange idea? Of course, it's a strange idea. Okay. We are running a little over time. When we take a look at the Toastmaster, they're the ringmaster of the whole circus. The questions they ask are, have the speakers given you good introductions to their speeches? Does a table topic master know the theme of the meeting? Does a general evaluator have any roles that need to be filled? Will there be any guests? Has the agenda been sent out? There's that time awareness again. How soon should it go out? How soon should you start getting roles? We have some people that as VPEs, they have the roles filled out for 3 months in advance. We have some that say, get to the meeting and say, hey, who wants to be Toastmaster? Now that happens when you have absences or sickness or something like that, but it's better if it doesn't. What kind of theme did you choose for the meeting? Did you choose one that's appropriate? Do you, using your grammarian experience as a Toastmaster, can you transition to each new part of the meeting smoothly? Okay. Then how do you make sure the meeting is run efficiently and still have some fun? Being a Toastmaster or observing the Toastmaster can raise your awareness of big picture considerations. And then finally, the speaker. Each time you speak, you make use of your new awareness in the words that you use, the way you organize your speech, the stories you choose to tell, and the way that you make your point. And every one of these roles that we've talked about makes us a better speaker. And every one of these roles that we've talked about makes us a better leader. So the whole meeting teaches you what you want to learn, not just your small part in it. There's no throwaway roles in a meeting, just as there are no throwaway offices in the club. Okay. I have a request from Scott from his club.
Yeah, well, my club is doing really well, the club I'm coaching. But the one thing that they're not doing, we're kind of moving around trying to improve everything, so like I noticed they weren't going to the TLIs. So we talked about that and we got them going to the TLIs, and we got them adding members. They're adding members like crazy, but now they're not knocking off the things on their educational program, and it's because they're a little uncertain, not sure about how to put it all into pathways. And I have to admit, I just came off the old program and I'm still learning it myself. I don't think I'd be able to answer their question. Is there somebody that we can get from the district that might be able to join us for a noon meeting some Tuesday that could dial in and step us through? And like, we were thinking about maybe not having a formal meeting, just having an educational day, and we'll take somebody's pathways and we'll help them go through it so everyone can learn and say, you got to do this, you got to do that. Don't worry about this. You know, is there somebody that can tutor us on
If
the
I were
pathways, step us through?
Scott, if I were still on my old schedule, I would jump on that in a heartbeat. But unfortunately, it's not 3 years ago. You want to talk to Cynthia or Jessica?
Okay,
Definitely.
Cynthia or Jessica, that's what I need to know. Okay.
At least that's what I think. I mean, it's not my show. Rebecca, you have any other?
Yeah, no,
suggestions?
those are exactly the two people that I would suggest.
Okay. Yeah,
Couple of-
we just like them to step us through, you know, what should I do as a speaker? What should I do as, well, base camp manager, we can do that separately, but they're afraid to put it in the system and what all do you need to do? And I have to admit, I've got questions myself and I've got, I think I got mine in, but I got to talk to my VPE actually.
A couple other people I thought of quickly. Tom Calling knows a lot about
Okay.
pathways. I'm not sure if he's available at noon. It would depend on how flexible he can
That's
make
when
his
his
schedule.
club meets.
Marion
his
Gramlich
local
is another one that
Oh,
has
Marion.
got involved with that.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
Cynthia probably has some other people that could mention.
Okay.
She is the training coordinator for the district this year.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for help on that. Okay.
And Amy does know pathways fairly well also.
Yeah.
But schedules.
Well, that's my problem now is my work has kicked into gear and I can't go to every one of their noon meetings. I go once a month, but as a coach, I shouldn't have to go to every one of them, but
Right.
you know, I go enough to kind of chime in and I'll fill a role and help them out. And I've tried really hard not to run the meetings. That's the one role I try not to do is the Toastmaster of the day. I love that role, but I try not to do that one because then I'm in charge and I don't want to do that as the coach. I'm trying not to.
I do need to make an announcement. Our next meeting will be December 13. Yes, December 13, and we have a special guest coming. Marion is going to take us through some marketing ideas. And one of the things she would like you to consider is what is the marketing approach you use for your clubs that you like the most? What is the marketing approach that you like to get your club's name out there that you like the most? And if you would just send those answers to me, I will get this out in an email as well to let everybody know what we're looking for. Okay? Is there anything else for the good of the group?
One of the things I like to emphasize from time to time is that, and this, I think this applies to what we're talking about here. When you're in Toastmasters, you're not alone. Okay. Rebecca and I have a combined 4 DTMs. We figure every couple should have at least 1 DTM each. And, you know, I've got 2, she's got 2. She's ahead of me though on the next one. But one of the things that I keep in mind myself and have shared with a couple of clubs before, I didn't get there by myself. I probably had help from 30 people on that first DTM.
At least.
And at least that many on the second DTM. And I have also helped several people get to their DTM because it takes a team. The person, if you time somebody who's working through the program, you are helping them. that's something that I don't think people understand quite the importance of those minor meeting roles that, well, we'll fill it if we can. That might get people more anxious to jump in and do some of those. If you kind of understand, when you are a timer, you are helping a speaker, you're actually mentoring to some extent that speaker. You're not an official mentor for that speaker, but if you give them feedback, that's mentoring.
And you're also learning how to improve your own speeches as a timer.
Well, I think when you do any of the roles, you learn to appreciate how much help you're getting as a speaker up there. And I also think it makes you a little more forgiving when they forget to time you. Or I've been
Yes.
watching a speech and so invested into the speaker. Oh, I was supposed to put the green one up, and they're almost to the red. So
Yeah.
That
I
happens
think
to
it
me.
makes you
It goes
appreciate-
green, red, no yellow at all.
That happened to
My
me
bad, that
once
one's on
when I
me.
was
They-
Scots clubs.
Your speech was too good.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
yeah. Okay, you have to start over.
Do it again.
Well, thanks for the help tonight. We appreciate it. Great session.
All right, good, good, good. Make sure that you keep these things in mind when we work with our clubs and when we work with our own clubs, and make use of the stuff that we've done. Maybe if we can train other people on how wide a scope this whole training by experience and observation is, they will realize how valuable a resource every meeting is going to be. So I appreciate all of you people, and I will see you on December 13th with our guest speaker, Marianne Alban Gramlich. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. I'm glad you could join us.